Welcome to another episode of Searching for MacGuffin with your hosts, George,
Gabe,
and the disembodied voice of... Whoa. What was that? Should we try that again?
The Angels. It was the Angels.
Oh,
Oh, I thought you were trying to say your name,
yeah.
which is what again? Just the same thing.
Yeah, just in case you didn't catch that. That's
Dan.
the voice. There.
Jeez.
Dan the man.
Our producer, Dan.
I can't commit to a bit around here.
I mean, now if we don't understand what you're saying...
I couldn't tell if you were making like a noise or like a or like a Dan.
There we go. It was a.
What? I still
You
don't...
cut out.
Yeah. I heard a...
I guess the mic just doesn't want me to commit to the bit.
Yeah, I guess.
It's okay.
Yeah. Anyways, he's there in the background
We're
While-
here.
while you focus on...
I'm on the ceiling.
Oh, is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's going to be chiming in there. But should we just get to the topic at hand?
Yeah, but
Actually,
also I just want to say how great it is to be back in the studio.
That's right.
in
Welcome back.
person.
Here we are, live, touching... Ooh, you've been working out.
I just started again.
We're related, so it's okay.
Now that I'm back from Texas, it's been good to be home. I do want to say it's been great to be home, but I think today we're
Do you feel rejuvenated? Do you
yes,
feel born again?
I do.
Okay.
I do think that I did miss my family and home.
Yeah.
I love, experiencing new places, but I think there is something about being home that just hits different.
Yeah.
But there was, like, while I was in Texas, I think we mentioned it in Trench Warfare, how, like, we were all pretty much going through rough times.
Yeah. I'm sorry, before you continue,
Yeah.
can our producer in the studio put like a timer on? Thanks. It's part of your job, man. Like, wake up. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I'm not.
I can't do it from the ceiling. So.
No. It's we're talking in studio producer. He does very little, so he could.
And he's just on his phone the entire time. I mean, right there's fine.
Yeah,
It's
that's
good.
fine. That's okay.
It's
Yeah.
good. I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. All right.
There it is.
Back to your touching testimonial.
So I think we were all going through pretty rough times at the beginning of the year. For me, when I was in Texas, I was very down, depressed.
Scared?
Yeah, sure. We can go scared.
Are you a man with fear?
I was fearful. But there was something I started rewatching with a character we're gonna talk about today.
It's not a secret. You can say his name.
The original. No, it's gonna be like Voldemort.
Oh.
Daredevil. I watched the original Netflix Daredevil show.
Yeah.
Are
Are we allowed to still call it the Netflix Daredevil show now that it's not on Netflix?
Netflix made it. I'll give
Does
them
it still
credit.
say Netflix in the credits?
No.
No, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe it does. Actually, he's the one that saw it.
Yeah, producer Link.
Don't say that name.
I'm sorry, Nick. Does it still say Netflix in the credits of the Daredevil show?
He doesn't remember. He doesn't.
Yeah, okay,
know.
nobody remembers. I'm also
Anyways.
rewatching it, so.
So
I always skip the intro.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I love that intro.
I don't, but anyways.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you like the new one better?
I disapprove.
I do like the new one better.
I do like the new one. I think I like them equal. Anyways,
Well, should you finish? Let's get back to the intro later. Go ahead.
That show really helped me out a lot. I was watching it in prep for the new one, which we'll also talk about, Born Again. But yeah, Daredevil's who we're chatting about today.
Okay. Yeah. So
What?
and this helped you throughout these troubled times in Texas?
Yes. Why were you doing that with your fingers?
I do this when I need to remember something, so that then I'm like, why is my fingers crossed? And then that reminds me.
Okay.
So
Is this about the intro?
yeah, it's about the intro.
Okay, cool.
So I think I've mentioned this before, personally, probably not on the show, but when I was watching the original Daredevil show, I was watching the Hannibal show as well, and they have a very similar, like, opening, very red, very liquidy blood, like, montage. So, like, I started watching Hannibal first, and then the Daredevil one came out. So I was like, oh, this feels like that same intro. So that's my, like, nitpick of I never really liked the Daredevil intro.
Gotcha.
Because it kind of just forms shapes with, like, a red ooze, which I don't even think it's supposed to be blood, right, with Daredevil. It's just, it is in Hannibal for sure, but It's just the red motif, I think, right? Because there's no reason for it to be blood.
He's
I never
bloody.
thought it was blood.
Yeah, I never thought it was
Just
blood.
red?
So I thought the exact same thing was done on the Hannibal show, but stronger thematically because it was blood. So that's just my nitpick. So now with the with the statues, I kind of like that one. I kind of like it better, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Our relationship with Daredevil didn't start though with this show, right? Well, what was your exposure to Daredevil? And it's amazing because we're like 130 plus episodes of the show in, and we've never
Talked about Marvel's best character.
Yeah. I mean, we've touched upon it, throughout the monthlies and in just Marvel episodes in general, but never really honed in on, what I agree with you is Marvel's best character. So what was your relationship to Matt Murdock, the man without fear?
First time I think was the movie. Was the movie in 2003 with Ben Affleck?
Really?
Yeah. I remember watching it. I don't know if it was with you guys or by myself. I just remember that movie really stuck with me because it was Spider-Man, X-Men, and then that movie that kind of came out in the similar time span of when I started watching movies.
A couple of years, yeah.
So like that's kind of like what was starting, and I would love obviously all the animated shows DC had, but watching live action was also something else that I think Marvel was doing at the time well, for what it was. I mean, for me as a kid, I was just like getting to see that on the big screen. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, you don't expect those kind of characters, those kind of like let's just like the powers, shown on film.
And I think at the time that I grew up, I think that was my introduction to a lot of these superheroes was on the big screen, and then eventually, seeking it out in comic books and things like that. As opposed to you, or I'm assuming you pretty much started with comic books and then got to see them.
Yeah, I think we've chronicled the bargain bin, comic book hunting, of my early to mid childhood. A lot of, Frank Miller, Daredevil comics, just randomly, sequentially out of order, just random issues in an arc. He fights the Gladiator. I don't know the full context of his feud with the Kingpin, where this is just one chapter of it and things like that. But I just knew, you get access to a lot of Batman comics because they're everywhere. And he's some might even argue overexposed.
Yeah.
But Daredevil was my little secret in the sense that there was only, me and a few friends who knew about this character. And whenever he would show up in the Hulk TV movie or on an episode of Spider-Man, the animated series, it was like, this one's for me because this is my character, and I had heard they were making a Daredevil movie for years on the pre-internet and in the newsletters. Frank Miller's Man Without Fear, I don't know if you actually know this, Gabe, is actually the pitch for the movie that never really got made.
Really?
Yeah, so there's elements in Man Without Fear that kind of contradict the mythos and lore of the Daredevil character, even the very lore that Frank Miller himself created in his original run.
Yeah.
Because it was basically trying to streamline everything for a movie. So Man Without Fear is basically the miniseries pitch. It's based on what would have been the script for the movie that never ended up getting made. The movie we did watch, that Fox movie from 2003, does still take a lot of elements from it, but that ninja suit that now we've seen on the TV show, in the cartoons, and it originated in that Trial of the Incredible Hulk movie, and then Frank Miller modified it for the Man Without Fear miniseries. So that's also interesting because growing up, I thought, you watch all this stuff out of order because it's all before your time. Frank Miller wrote these books in the 70s. I wasn't born. The Hulk movies from the late 80s to early 90s. I think it might be a 1990 thing, but I didn't see, it's based on the 1970s show, also 70s and 80s. And you see it whenever you come across it, whenever this would.
I've never even seen those.
Oh,
I've seen clips of him,
but
but I have never actually watched them.
You should.
Where would you even watch them?
They have them on free platforms like Pluto and stuff like that. I might own a copy of it digitally. I know I own a copy physically, but you might be able to just find it. I think I was looking for it the other day, and you can't buy it, and I might have bought it before when you could buy it, but it's definitely like on one of those free streaming services. But anyways, so this one piece of history informs the other piece of history, and everything is either an illusion or inspiration, but you don't really know what it comes to. All to say that original Daredevil film, as bad of a movie as it is, man, I love that movie.
A work of art.
Yeah. We recently watched it again together.
Yeah.
The director's cut, which you had never seen before.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. What was that experience like revisiting the Daredevil film?
I don't know. Like rewatching it, it was definitely like I found myself quoting things and just moments of just nostalgia just crawling back, and it was just pouring in where I'm just like how influential I think the movie had, like how like influential it was to me growing up, and when I watch things, how I jokes that I made, things that I would think of, references that like would pop into my head. I'm just like, this is where it's from. And like I would hear things like how freaking Colin Farrell's like snub at an Oscar at an Academy Award for his portrayal as Bullseye was just incredible. And like you and me were on the literally on the floor dying at like his portrayal of Bullseye, and it was fantastic. It was just like it was such a 2000s movie, like a Fox 2000s
yeah, for real
movie.
For real. If you grew up watching this movie and you haven't revisited, I highly recommend revisiting. And if you don't have a great amazing time based on nostalgia alone, like come over to our house and then watch it with us, because
like
I was quoting, and I wasn't just quoting the movie line by line. I was like, this is what the next shot is. Exterior courthouse. Foggy and Daredevil walk down the steps. The gangster, I forgot he's named after one of the artists. Is it Bendis? Yeah, Bendis walks into the limousine laughing. Like I literally knew the whole movie by memory, which was crazy because it's been years since I've seen it. But that's how embedded.
It wasn't Bendis. Bendis dies. Bendis is one of the names that he.
So I think it's Mac or. Yeah, I think it's Mac. Anyways, but all the little cameos like Kevin Smith, who wrote Miller dies in that. Frank Miller dies in that movie. Actually, I remember that movie drove me back into the comics because that film it's the cross of media and like the original art form. I remember Kevin Smith wrote a solo one shot that was supposed to be a miniseries that he never finished, at least to my knowledge. I was waiting years for the second issue, where Bullseye is like, oh, I wear a leather jacket now, and I like draw a bullseye on my head. And it was like, okay, this is because of the movie. But it also brought me back to the early 2000s. Yeah, Smith, Bendis, David Mack, that run, Brubaker. I hadn't read that stuff. I was behind a couple of years, and I read Daredevil for the next several years after that film. So even though that movie was like theatrically a terrible film, it really brought me back to the character and made me appreciate its origins and what was going on with the character at that time. And those books are some of the best comic books I've ever read.
What did you think about the movie when it came out, when you first saw it?
I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Like I could tell that it wasn't great, but I never imagined in a million years that they would make a movie about Daredevil. Like Spider-Man made sense. They've been trying to make that movie for years. Like
X-Men.
Yeah, X-Men made sense. I didn't like X-Men. I thought it kind of sucked. And well, all the Fox movies kind of suck. And Daredevil wasn't unlike it, but there was enough there from the original source material. I've always loved Elektra and Daredevil, their relationship. I told my wife this because we were rewatching both the original series and we rewatched the movie with you. And I was like, I love the toxicity of their relationship. It's just so beautiful and tragic. And just to see that on screen was something I never thought. That's why the Netflix show is the same thing. I never thought they'd make a series about it growing up. To see these characters come to life, Bullseye, the Kingpin. And I think everyone who plays those parts is super good, maybe with the exception of Ben Affleck. But obviously the movie is very campy, and Colin Farrell is aware of it. But Michael Clark Duncan and Colin Farrell and Jennifer Garner, Jon Favreau. I was a big fan of Swingers and Made at that time. So Like the casting was perfect for that movie.
Yeah, watching it again, I realized that that's the movie like that spurned my infatuation with Jennifer Garner. Like I just remember, I used to be like, that was like a number one crush. Like I was obsessed with her, and then like I watched Electra like 3 times.
That's crazy. I've never seen it more than once.
And now I'm excited because like it's on. We have it on Prime, I think.
Yeah.
And is there director's cut?
There is a director's cut, but it's not a real director's cut. They like add a couple of shots where you see like the size go into someone's body, or you'll see like the stab wound. Oh, and then there'll be like alternative shots. Like she'll walk into a room from a different camera angle, but there's really like no substantial. I think it's actually shorter than the
Like that
original
movie.
cut.
Like that movie sucks, but at the same time, I'm just like just an excuse to watch Jennifer Garner play Electra, and that movie for some reason I was just throwing like butter knives at my door like when I was a kid, and my mom was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
I remember they did an Ultimate Electra versus Daredevil comic. I don't know if you ever read that. So it goes back and it kind of retells the story of when they were together in college, and then Electra has a costume similar to the one that she had in the movie, in the Daredevil movie, and then later she'll get one that looks like the one she got in the Electra movie, and it was like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, I read a lot of the early stuff, like because I remember I asked you like what to start with,
Yeah,
and
for
like
sure.
I went back to like his origin.
You've read Man Without Fear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what I think. This was around the time season 3 came out, and I decided I wanted to go back and read. Season 3 of the Netflix show came out, and I went back.
And a lot of this stuff is like comic books 101. Like if you're into comic books, these were like on the must-read list. It's like Watchmen and like The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't go through the movie and not talk about its iconic scene with the Evanescence song.
Evanescence has been writing the Daredevil movie for like decades now.
1000%.
It's the only reason they're famous.
But they also have another good song in that movie.
That's in that movie. Exactly. That's why they got one, like, it's not a power ballad, but it's like they got one hard rock song, and then they got a slow, like, like melodic, and that's all you need. Like that contrast. That's
and
it.
you were telling me something about that song. You were mentioning it, right?
Oh, what was it about it specifically?
You were in.
Was it about how they didn't want to have a rapper on it?
No, it was something. No, not that one.
Oh.
The other one.
My Immortal?
Yeah.
Oh, like the fact that I staged it in like with my drama team. Yeah. So we did Romeo and Juliet this year, and I found a way to include a performance of Evanescence, My Immortal, like towards the end where Romeo and Juliet die, and that's one of my greatest achievements on stage.
Spoiler alert, by the way, if you.
Oh yeah, if you've never read Romeo and Juliet, sorry about that. They well actually in the opening monologue they tell you they die. So okay, if you've never seen the first couple of words of Romeo and Juliet, sorry, it tells you they die. But yeah, to incorporate elements of Daredevil into Shakespeare, that's a big bucket list moment for me. So, but the other one was that Evanescence almost didn't even make it onto the soundtrack.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, because they refused. They were gonna get picked up by their label, and they refused. Basically, they told them, "Listen, you need a second vocalist, like a rapper, and then we'll pick you up and we'll distribute and market you." And they thought about it and they were like, "Nah." So they rejected a multi-million-dollar deal, and then they went home and they were like sad. And then they got a call back from the studio who was like, "All right, if you give us one single." Like if you do it with this guy from, I don't know where he's from, 12 Stones or something like that. The guy who sings on, if you do it with this already established like rock rapper, this one single, then we'll pick up your album. And then the rest was history.
I think it was the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So good job for betting on yourself, Evanescence. We're still talking about you to this day. Any final thoughts on that film before we move on to the original Netflix series?
I did like how, I mean, I think it hasn't aged super well, but I also liked how like his movement.
Oh yeah, it hasn't aged super well, but for the time it was like yeah.
Like when they got back to him, when they went from CGI to actually Ben Affleck or the stunt actor, like
except for that one part where like he does the kick flip on the motorcycle to Bullseye, and it goes in slow motion and it looks like a video game, and then he starts rolling like.
I think for me, it's mainly him jumping off of buildings and like. You know, stuff that you see from like the comics. And I'm like, okay, that's, you know.
completely impossible things that make no sense except in a comic book. That final shot, that's like the rope from his swinging thing,
Yeah.
like just all over him. It's beautiful. It's a work of art.
No, the funniest thing is when he jumps off of a super tall building and lands like on one of those what are those called?
Puddles?
No, where they work on the windows. Those
Oh,
contraptions.
scaffolds.
Those are scaffolds?
Yeah.
Like on the side of the buildings?
Yeah.
They're hanging on by ropes and he lands and he slides off of.
Oh, like the it wasn't a scaffold? It is a scaffold.
I thought scaffolds were like. Maybe you're right.
Okay. But anyways.
Where he just lands on that, like after just diving 300 feet, and just lands on his
Yeah.
feet and slides.
Yeah, he just lands on his feet. Yeah, definitely scaffold. He just lands on his feet. He's constantly not bending his knees when he jumps off entire buildings. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's great.
I definitely go recommend to go back and watch that movie if you want a good laugh.
And if you can watch the director's cut, the ending actually makes sense. So, and we thought that's all we'd ever get, right? Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner, but little did we know that Netflix would create a series that chronicles the origin of Daredevil. What was it? While Gabe Googles pictures of scaffolds,
What was your question? I'm listening.
what was the significance of the original Netflix series?
I was in college. I was a freshman in college. My roommate at the time, I wake up. Well, I come back from class and he's watching just something on the TV, and he's just like pretty much been there the whole night. And I'm like, what are you watching?
Oh, you didn't know the show was coming out?
No.
Wow.
And then he's just like, this new show on Netflix, Daredevil.
This random show called Daredevil.
Because he's not into like this.
Right.
My friend wasn't into superheroes or anything. Like
But he's into the binge.
and he wasn't even super into TV at the time. But like sometimes he would just randomly start watching shows. And this one he started watching, and then he said Daredevil, and I'm like, oh shoot, what? They made a Daredevil show? That's awesome. And I sat down, I watched a couple episodes, and I just skipped the rest of my classes. And I just finished the season.
Yeah, I don't know if I've shared my experience with it. I was greatly anticipating the show releasing, and it was on a take your child to work day, and I was working at public school at the time, so there was almost no kids in the building. So we conspired, me and several of the teachers, to just huddle. Like they had 3 and I had 4 and you had 5, and we just kind of built like a class of the entire high school, and then we just binge watched from 8 o'clock to like from 8 to 3 that whole day, as many episodes of Daredevil that we could sneak in. And it was low-key kind of amazing. The best day of work ever. I was paid.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I was paid to binge watch Daredevil season 1.
Yeah, I just remember I binged, and there was something so special about, when Netflix drops an entire season of a show and the weekend is approaching and you're just able to, you got weekend plans, And I really enjoyed it. Like, and that's, I think when I watched the later season, that's when I started getting back into comics, but I was just like, oh man, because I think this was 2015. So this is after Guardians. What came out in 2015? Oh, Age of Ultron. So we were still like, riding the Marvel high,
right?
Like in the middle of it, and I just wasn't sure. Like they would mention things. I think they mentioned certain things.
They mentioned the Battle of New York.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, are these things gonna all be connected? Like that's awesome if they can get like TV shows and things like that.
We're still working on it.
Yeah. Still working out the kinks.
Well,
But
actually, I mean, I guess they're connected now. Like, there's very clear crossovers.
Oh, yeah.
On the new series.
yeah. But at the time I was just like, man, this is awesome. But it was just a Daredevil story, and the fact that like he wears that ninja suit for the majority of the season, like
for the entire
until the
season,
end,
until the
yeah.
final episode. Yeah.
That's
That's a bold choice, by the way. Not that I know anything, but I wouldn't have made that choice. Like, I would have got him in the suit like by the 3rd or 4th episode.
Yeah.
Tops.
I thought the acting and the writing was fantastic. The choreography.
Cause,
was
listen,
special,
the
too.
ninja suit is kind of a joke. It's kind of a thing you put him in when you can't afford to like give him a suit. You know what I mean? And like, it's an important part of his origin, but you kind of want to get him out of it as soon as possible. And now it is dope, like one of his legitimate suits now.
Yeah, and I think, but it's just like, I think it adds to the story, especially the way that they told it. Like, this is his origin. He doesn't have, he's just a guy who, just putting on clothes. He's putting on gym short, like pants and a long sleeve.
The only thing is that, unfortunately, they didn't get the license to put him in Adidas the way that Frank Miller kind of did, because that was kind of. I'm pretty sure he didn't ask for the license. I think it's only 2 stripes in Man Without Fear, but we know what you did, Miller.
And he's in boots. It's fine.
Yeah,
Let it pass.
yeah, I guess whatever.
No, but I loved it. I loved that show from the beginning, and I think I think it really worked. Waiting until the end, and I think they had a good understanding of the story they wanted to tell, and they were patient with it, like not bringing it out until the end. And they're like, "This is
everything has an origin, including the suit. Like, you have to meet Melvin Potter, who would be the gladiator, and you have to create his story so that." We take it so much for granted that, like, Tobey Maguire is able to build that random suit. Like, I get it. He's a high school genius, but is he a super scientist?
Where does he get the resources for that?
Exactly. And everybody kind of just makes a suit all the time in these movies, but you have the time to lay out and flesh out every aspect, even from his baton, right?
And I think it weaved into the story perfectly, because it has to deal with Fisk and where like, certain things that he comes from, and it just they wove it together really well, I think.
Yeah. Let's get to the heart of it. What is it about this show that resonates, and why did it become such a, I guess you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? A force, I guess, because I thought it was just us that had been begging for more Daredevil for the years, but apparently everyone involved with this show and all the fans, whether they be Netflix or Marvel or TV in general, like, this was worth rebooting now. What is it, like a decade later?
Yeah, a little bit more.
So what is it about this show that resonates so much with audiences?
I mean, he's kind of like Marvel's Batman. And that's not like, to compare. He's a completely different character for his own reasons, thing like that. But I think that same thing that pulls me towards Batman, I feel like is a similar thing that pulls me towards Daredevil personally.
Yeah.
And like I said, at the time, I think Marvel was just the giant, They were the juggernaut, and everything, and a lot of things that they were pulling out was great. It was fantastic. But I think it's more than that. I think it's more than just, the fancy, the super flashy superpowers and the flying around and all these things. I think that the heart that Charlie Cox brings to Matt Murdock, and obviously seeing him, like, the story progresses him as a kid, leading up to him growing up. I think it's easy to relate to.
Yeah. Because I think Matt is more human than Bruce.
Yeah.
I think there's more people out there that can relate to someone who's kind of like starting from the bottom.
Yeah, he's not super rich. He's not. Yeah.
And he's like, in a sense, he's able to like acquire success and it's that dual narrative of seeing like his upbringing juxtaposed with where he is now. But I also think it's struggle. He's such a flawed character. And I think the Netflix show really, really embraced that, where you don't really agree with everything Daredevil does, the choices that Matt makes in his relationships, like even in his fight for crime. There's so many gray areas in his thought process, and he's so flawed. His struggle with faith, I think, is a big, big part that I was afraid they were going to kind of like deviate away from. I don't know if you felt that with the new series.
I had read something that's what they did, but upon watching, I mean, we'll get to it, but upon watching, I'm like, that's not what they, like, I get why the choices that they made, why it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoyed like the juxtaposition of him like as a vigilante, but also as a lawyer.
Yes. You don't get that much time, like in a movie. It's like, look, he's a lawyer,
and how he fights, for justice when he is a lawyer. Like, it's not just a cover, like going back to like with Bruce is like, he's pretty much covering as a billionaire playboy,
Yeah, like nothing in Bruce's life is actually who he is, except for he signs the checks, So like when they do Bruce right, he is actually helping people.
Yeah.
But also he's so rich that he doesn't really have to do much to help people.
Mm-hmm. and just him and his dynamic with Foggy, and you know how they work together, and their work as lawyers, you know, trying to help people that, you know, a lot of people wouldn't take on their cases. I think it's extremely noble, but then also, you know, how do you balance that with going off at night and beating criminals to a pulp?
Yeah.
When it's like you took an oath to, you know, believe in justice and, you know, due process, but
it's that contradiction that I think
Exactly.
makes the character beautiful.
Yeah.
Because unlike Batman, and I mean, we know we've talked about Batman a lot on this show, so I'm by no means disparaging the character at its core. But just like Punisher, which I guess we could talk about a little bit, they're kind of like power fantasies in the sense that they just exist, right? They're a force of nature. But Matt is struggling to balance that belief in the system of justice, knowing its flaws, belief in the church, knowing its flaws, you know, its shortcomings, belief in humanity, knowing its shortcomings. And I mean, it's ultimately about faith in the system, you know, faith in a higher power, you know, faith in humanity, that like trichotomy of belief, but also trying to take control back into his own hands. And that's why he's like constantly vacillating. I mean, how much of the Daredevil show does Daredevil spend not even being Daredevil?
Yeah.
You know? It's almost like he's not Daredevil yet in season 1. He's Daredevil in season 2, and then he's no longer Daredevil in season 3.
Because it felt like what I think it does so well is it focuses on the character of Matt Murdock, and from his upbringing to him as an adult, I think it's extremely. I think it's just different from a lot of other things that we see when like a lot of things that we see are just very flashy what they can do with their powers and things like that, but to really dissect a person and who this character really is and why they do what they do, and then having that propel them into whatever scenario, whatever villain they're facing or fight that they're fighting, really adds to the story. It enriches it. It gives it more weight. To me, at least, it makes the end more satisfying because that journey was grueling.
Yeah.
Because I was able to see like, oh, how would I feel like if that happened to me? Like he was a kid when he lost his sight, and there's a scene I think in third season when he wins a case for this kid who like lost his legs.
I haven't got to the third season again yet, but
Really?
yeah, I'm in the middle of Defenders right now.
Anyways, he tells this kid basically,
Unfortunately,
like the kid like he can't walk. He's paralyzed. He won't be able to walk anymore. And then they win the case, and he basically sees that the kid is still like not happy because he's paralyzed, and he's just like, "This happened to you. Like no one's gonna come save you. There's like you have to do it yourself, and you have to put on a smile. And it's gonna suck. It's gonna get harder from here on out. But you like, what's the alternative? Like you have to try." And I think that Matt is such a human character, and it's so relatable. It's a way that like, to me, it's something that you can aspire to, but it's also something that I've gone through. And that's why I said earlier when I was just like, when I was in Texas and rewatching the show, like all of like, there's different themes throughout the seasons that are really impactful. But I think that third season was extremely important, I think, to me during like at that time.
Yeah. That's the real Born Again season where they adapt the book Born Again.
Yeah. And what is like, it's probably one of my favorite seasons in television.
I've only seen it once. That's why it's like I can't even refer back to it.
You're gonna go crazy
because unfortunately, like we found out like soon thereafter that the show wouldn't be coming back. So I kind of like put that to rest. Like, oh, this is the end of a chapter in my life. And I never returned back. I had seen season 2, I think 1 and 2 again going into season 3.
Mm-hmm.
But then I never saw season 3 again. So I'm about to get to that point now, and I'm very much looking forward to it because I think it's the best season, right?
Yeah. So I used to think that season 2 was my favorite because, Punisher,
it's the coolest
Elektra,
one.
like it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then upon rewatching, I'm like, oh, like it kind of gets a little convoluted with the hand stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hand being,
I'm used to all that
hand
stuff, so
being
I love
the
it.
villainous group. Just
Yeah.
not hand stuff.
Yeah, with the hand stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, that was inappropriate.
That was crazy.
Come on, Daredevil.
And so, but
in his defense, he can't see, so he doesn't know what he's doing.
But the season was just awesome. You have Punisher, and the struggle, I think, also with Karen,
Yeah.
where Karen's kind of leaning towards the side of the Punisher, but like that debate of like taking life versus allowing the system to do what it does, and just how Matt continues to like. It seems that he would get proven like wrong over and over again, and because you kind of start to think, I'm like, is Punisher kind of right? But Matt Murdock always, to the point where like it affects his relationship with Karen, where it's like this person that he really cares about, and her ideology and how she thinks about it in this way, and she's just like, which she has her own experience to speak to that, but he doesn't know that. It's so interesting, like the fact that like I'm getting like we're watching these two people have differing views on this this topic that's causing a rift in their relationship, when it's like a lot of other shows would just focus on what bad guy are we beating up this week, or like what case are we solving this week, and it's just like there's just a very human aspect to the show where it deals with a lot of different like avenues in life, I think, which makes it very special. And then rewatching the third season and the crisis of faith that he has, because that happens after Defenders. And Defenders, I think, is the big thing. Like the end of Defenders is what, is the catalyst for season 3.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's the thing too, that I think season 2 does not benefit from the fact that a lot of its story gets like wrapped up in an exterior series that was not very well received. So that's like minus points for season 2 in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's bonus points for season 3, because I think season 3 elevates that and rectifies it, points in a new direction. One thing I held against season 3 for a long time was that it's a season about Bullseye and he never becomes Bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
But now that where we are at now in the future, it was all worth it, because it was an excellent story to be told.
No, yeah, I loved it. And going back to, and even also just diving into Bullseye. Bullseye isn't this guy that you just call off, from a plane. Like he's like
from killing people in an Irish bar.
He has to catch a flight, and like he's not just a random figure like this character to be defeated. He's a character that we see like basically be created.
Right. Which was it was uncomfortable for me, because you don't really delve into Bullseye's origin that much, especially in the Daredevil books. There's a couple of miniseries that they do that, and like you can draw parallels between what they do in that series and what they do on the show. Something matches up, some things don't match up. Also, and like I think it's Bullseye's Most Wanted, you're not really sure what is real and what isn't real, like what's Bullseye's version of the story, you know what I mean? So for me to definitively show us like this is how Poindexter became Bullseye, just even using his name, because for years and years we didn't know who Bullseye was. Like he was just Bullseye, and like creating a backstory was uncomfortable for me, because even some of those modern comics I was like, okay, maybe, Yeah. But for me, he's always a mystery, and to like put a name and a face and a history to him was very uncomfortable for me. But in the end, I think it was worth it, because I think the performance is great, and to be able to build an antagonist like that, to see like the antithesis of our belief in someone else, really helps us understand ourselves, and in Matt's case, the character that he represents.
And I think like as much as it is, such a big thing for Bullseye, I think it also elevates Fisk as someone who is so devious and cunning and smart, and like he's basically pulling all the strings from prison, and creating someone, creating a character like this, and I don't even think he fully knows what he made.
Yeah.
In Poindexter. But I mean, there's so many great aspects of the show where he's what's his name? Not Navati. What's his name? Ray.
The police officer?
The FBI.
The FBI. Yeah, the one that I was afraid was going to be Bullseye, actually, when the season started. I was like, no way, this is Bullseye. You're looking him up. It's not Ray Liotta.
Nadim.
Sure. Nadim.
Ray Nadim.
I was like, is this Bullseye? I'm not going to like this show.
Agent Ray Nadim was also just... He was such an excellent character, and I think the storylines they just go so well. But to me, what hit, I think, the hardest was just Matt's crisis of faith, and also and like him, teetering in and out of crossing that line that he's always had.
The one that Ben Affleck has no problem crossing in the movie,
Not
right? As he
whatsoever.
pushes that guy into the
The
train.
2000s were a different time. But it's just, there was just so many different aspects of, like, he's fighting, like, his belief in God. He feels like God has given up on him, so he's doing the same, and pushes away his friends, and he thinks it's going to be a one-way trip. And there's just so many things that you see in ourselves, that we have our self-destructive tendencies when things don't go our way, when we suffer great loss, when we're down and defeated. And the thing is, like, one thing that one of the stories that he constantly brings up is the story of Job. And around
Yes.
that time in the year, I was also reading the story of Job, and just it was around the same time that I started watching. Then he just mentioned that, and I was like, the connections, the things that you piece together. But how this man was made to suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer even more, and he still was not, cursing God. And to the point where, like, Matt looked up to Job at the beginning, and then he starts calling Job a fool. And then he's just like, God's done with me and I'm done with him. And just having also his, like, the relationship with, the nun.
Yeah.
And just,
The nun that appears in the director's cut of the Affleck movie.
that was that her?
Yeah, that was her.
It's Maggie.
Yeah.
And then just also this, when you get towards the end, you think, oh, there's nothing more you can do, and then they just keep on adding to the pressure. And there was just so many different things that I loved about it, like, watching him train his mind, his body again, like rebuilding himself. But then also, it was kind of cool. It's kind of like, it's cool to see, Matt, like, pissed off Matt, and he's going on this, like, he is going on this, like, not murder run, but, like, he's beating everyone up. Like,
Yeah.
when he goes into the prison, gets out.
Rage campaign.
Yeah. And the fact that he doesn't feel like there's any other way to defeat this enemy, because he's tried everything, and the moment, like, he thinks he will, like, he's about to cross that line, and he doesn't, with the help of his friends, with the help of the people around him that he's been pushing out the entire time. And I think that stressed for me the importance of the people that try to hold on to you, and that you need to do the same with them, that it's important that you can't do it alone, because Matt tried to do it alone, and that's where he was going. That's the direction he was headed. But the people in his life, kept fighting, and to the point where, like, even one of them, Karen, was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, he's on his own. Like, he keeps doing this. This isn't right. And Foggy's like, people have been doing this to him his whole life, and I'm not going to do it. And it's very tricky, because there's always, those friendships, those relationships that can be toxic. And a lot of times there's times where you need to let go, and times where you need to hold on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's not like a one size fits all solution to the topic, but I just love how a show can cover all these things. And it really helped me, I think, mentally, to see that, obviously nothing, directly to what I was experiencing, but there was themes that I took from it, and that really helped me out of a dark headspace when I was over there by myself. And I loved it. And
Blind
yeah.
and in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't even get to Fisk and Punisher, but thankfully, thanks to our Disney overlords, we have a whole other series to explore those characters. We've taken a look back at the journey of the Guardian Devil. We've heard from our guardian angel, Dan, whose input was invaluable in this episode. And we're going to continue to explore it next week as we move on to the new rebooted sequel series, Born Again. So we'll continue talking about Daredevil. Any final thoughts? Or until next week, always remember that light at the end of the tunnel, it isn't heaven. It's the C train.
thought you were gonna say Dan.
No one threw me a question.
Yeah, we.
We'll
We
throw you. We'll
realized
throw you them.
We
now.
got you. We learned our lesson now from episode 1.